it's about the I got to say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State. Jalen wants Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game.
Ground ball, right side. Cabrera will cut it off. Galarraga covers. He's out. No, he's safe.
Phoenix has the foul, and a pinnacle ball throws it down.
DeBrincat gets it back to Gosses. Barron across now. King.
They score! Raymond!
Big five. Johnson to throw, and it's caught by St. Brown for a first down.
This is BS Sports.
And welcome in on a Tuesday for another BS Sports. We're back once again. All-Star game tonight. Pistons getting their behinds kicked in the Summer League right now. All is well in the universe. All is right. Everything is normal. There is no abnormality. Everything is what it's supposed to be. We're in the natural state of being. But I don't know if this is going to end up being a shorter show. Oh, and by the way, I don't know how noticeable it is. It might not be noticeable at all unless you have the most particular hearing. My voice is a little shot. I was at the Tiger game this past weekend. Yes, that Tiger game, the one on Saturday afternoon. For those of you who might have missed or who did watch it, I mean, you know exactly why my voice would be shot after that game. We'll talk about it a little bit because we're gonna do a little bit of MLB stuff to start the show. But we also got some Summer League to break down. Pistons played their first couple of Summer League games. We're gonna talk about those. Any takeaways you can even have from that? Because honestly, you might as well have the guys play, at an elementary school because I really don't value much of any of this. But we have to talk about something. Look, all right. I host a sports news show. All right. Like, what do you want me to talk about? The Olympics? You know what? If you want me to talk about the Olympics, here's what I got for you.
Ow!
A baseball to the skull. That's what you get. I'm not talking about the Olympics. This is my show. It is my show.
Ow!
I will forever love that drop. Perfect. Anyway, I lost my train of thought. So I guess we'll get started here. So headline of the show is we're at the halfway point in the MLB season. Sort of. It's not technically the halfway point. We've played over half the games at this point. But you reach the All-Star break. That's symbolically, if anything, the halfway point in the season. So I thought we'd take a look here at the standings and just kind of go over a general overview of some of the teams that are, sitting in first place, how they're doing, things that are going well for those teams in the playoffs, teams that are kind of in the bubble, where they're at, all that fun stuff. So starting with the American League, leading the respective divisions from Central, East to West, we have the Cleveland Guardians, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Seattle Mariners. Cleveland Guardians with the best record in the American League. I got to be honest, I don't think anybody going into this season expected the Cleveland Guardians to be that way, but they are. I mean, like, even the weirdest thing is, like, they're doing this without Shane Bieber. I mean, like, Shane Bieber goes down. You kind of get the feeling, okay, this is like a retooling year again for the Guardians. Last year, disappointing. Didn't make actually, I believe they did. I can't remember if they did make the playoffs or not because they didn't do much. I remember the Twins made the playoffs. I don't remember what the circumstances were of last year's playoffs. But either way, the Guardians look fantastic going into the All-Star break. Obviously, you want to talk about some of their contributors. Plenty of names to go around. You got your Steven Kwans, you got your Jose Ramirez, but you also got your Josh Naylors. Josh Naylor batting with an 816 OPS, having a really good year. And then I would say probably the story of the year for the Guardians is David Fry, who comes out of nowhere. I believe he's like 30 or some years old. Let me actually take a look at that. Yeah, David Fry, he's 28 years old, just comes out of nowhere, basically. He's a 28-year-old. It's not technically his rookie year, but it's his 28-year-old sophomore year. And he has just blown me away. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Like last year, he was just sort of a league average, 735 OPS, 238 average. And then this year he just comes to light, 854 OPS, I should say. But you even got some production here from Bo Naylor. Not from the bats. Actually, you know what? Never mind. I am looking at the stat list here, and Bo Naylor was like sixth or something, and it was like team home runs. So that is not accurate. But either way, I mean, you have Andres Jimenez. He's another one who has contributed. Not a lot of pop in his bat, but a consistent bat. Jose Ramirez and Steven Kwan obviously leading the way in terms of batting average. But with pop, I mean, you have obviously we already mentioned David Fry, and you have Josh Naylor, both guys high OPS, but Steven Kwan hitting for some power too. I mean, his slugging is 512, his OPS is or his on base percentage is 407. So he is mostly just not a power hitter, but 919 OPS, nothing to sneeze at that. And as from the pitching angle, you do have, your Tanner Bibees. He's leading the way in terms of inning pitched, at least. And usually when I think of the Guardians, I think of pitching. Like the only pitcher that's listed on their ERA leaderboard here is Tanner Bibee. But it's weird to me because right now I don't really think of them as a pitching team, which is very different than the Guardian teams I had grown to hate as a Tiger fan. But good for the Guardians. They're leading the way in the American League. You also got the Baltimore Orioles. Everybody sort of knows the story about them. Very young team, but incredibly, incredibly fun with deep, deep talent. You got Henderson, you got Santander, you got Rushman, you got Colton Cowser as well, who is making, he's not blowing you away, but he has hit 12 home runs, so he's doing something. You got Ryan Mountcastle, you still got Cedric Mullins, who, mind you, the batting average is not all there, but he plays a pretty good field from my understanding, at least, and he's a veteran presence. I mean, he's not gonna be an all-star, but he's not a terrible player either. I mean, look, I've seen some bad players, and Cedric Mullins, he's not who he once was, but he could be much worse. He's not even really, he's not the guy that their offense runs through. Obviously, it runs through your Gunnar Hendersons, it runs through your Rushmans. So for the Orioles, they're up in second place, leading their division. And then the Seattle Mariners. I don't know that many people, myself included, really thought that the Mariners would be coming away with their division, but they are in a very real way. They are up ahead in their division to the point where I don't even know, are the Astros a real team? Did Dusty Baker, did he use some voodoo magic to make them play really well last? I don't know. Because, it's not like the Astros lost a lot of guys. It's pretty much very similar roster, and they're just not putting it together, although they are in the wild card chase. But the Mariners, they're running that division with, I would say, relative ease, because technically they're only a game ahead of the Astros, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. All right, it just doesn't feel right. I don't know why the Mariners are doing good, but they are. And who's leading the way? Well, it's a lot of randomness. Obviously you have Julio, but Julio only has 10 home runs on the year, batting 267 with a 690 OPS. Not amazing numbers from a guy who was, supposed to be like a future star. It's like looking at these batting average numbers, there's not anyone in particular. You got Luke Raley, 710 OPS. Offensively, they're not blowing you away. I would venture to guess as someone who doesn't watch a lot of Mariners baseball, that it would probably be due to their pitching. And yeah, they got 4 guys who pitched over 100 innings. So they're eating innings, and they're surviving off, the Luis Castillos and the George Kirby's of the world, and the Logan Gilbert of the world. Which, hey, you know what? Winning is winning, and if you're the Mariners, it's a little surprising. I guess the Mariners feel like the team that I thought the Guardians should have been like. And maybe I'm wrong about that. Again, I'm not a Mariners fan, so I don't follow the Mariners. But I guess I didn't imagine that the Mariners would be a team that is led by their pitching staff. Just something feels wrong about it, but it is what it is. The other couple of wild card teams that we have here, you got the Yankees. They sort of speak for themselves. Aaron Judge, Juan Soto. I don't know what the timeline is on Garrett Cole. If he is going to come back. I don't think he has come back. I think I would have heard that news. Yeah, I mean, like they're the Yankees. They have a lot of stars. There's not much more for me to add. Minnesota Twins in the second wild card spot. Yeah, I mean, they're coming off of the high of winning that playoff series last year, so they're probably feeling real good about themselves. And this year they're playing okay. You got a lot of contributors on that team in, obviously Correa and Royce Lewis. But Willie Castro, former Tiger, by the way, Willie Castro, he has found himself a role on the Twins. I don't know if he is healthy. If Byron Buxton is healthy, but you still got guys like Ryan Jeffers who, a 791 OPS. He's not blowing you away by any means. Carlos Santana provides a legitimate role on the team. Royce Lewis has been hurt. I should disclose that. I knew that, and I forgot. I knew that he was on the team, but he's been hurt and has not really been much of a contributor. But when he was playing, it was really good. So I don't know. Maybe that does something for you. Byron Buxton, on the other hand, he's surprisingly actually been playing, and he's Byron Buxton. When he plays, he's good. But the problem is he doesn't play a whole lot. This year he has, but overall, meh. Jose Miranda, like I said, Willie Castro. They got a lot of guys. They got a lot of guys in Minnesota that can, put up decent numbers. I wouldn't say they really have that like superstar caliber player. And maybe you could say Correa, obviously World Series with the Astros. Nah, I don't know. He's sort of, maybe this is just sour Tigers fan who wanted Carlos Correa instead of Javi Baez. And that's just like sour grapes because I can't have Carlos Correa and my rival Minnesota Twins have to get him. But either way, the Twins putting up, pretty great looking numbers for them. So they're having a good season. And then finally, the Red Sox rounding out the wild card. I'm gonna be honest with you. I have nothing to add. I don't think the Red Sox are a real baseball team. If somebody can find me a real player for the Boston Red Sox, I refuse to believe. I know that they technically have real players. I know. I understand. You're going to tell me about Rafi Devers. I know. Outside of Rafi Devers, I'm looking at this list of players right now. I'm not convinced any of these people are real. Like maybe they're just like copies of Rafi Devers and like they're just like weaker versions of him. I don't know. I'm just saying. I guess Masataka Yoshida. I'm familiar with him because he had like the dumbbells, like the inflatable dumbbells. I remember him. Other than that, I don't know who any of these people are. I on the pitching side, I got nothing. Nick Pivetta, I'm familiar with him. Cutter Crawford, just a cool name. I don't have much. I don't believe that they're real. If I were to pick a phony out of these current playoff teams, I would pick the Boston Red Sox. Maybe that's also just my hatred of all things Boston, specifically the Boston Red Sox. But hey, I mean, have a terrible, disgusting city like Boston, and you get a terrible, disgusting fan base. So just normal stuff like that. But outside looking in, you do have a few teams that are kind of in the precipice. I mentioned it earlier, the Houston Astros, they're 3.5 out. They've been clawing their way back. I don't know how realistic it is to imagine them to actually make that jump, get in. Like, the problem is look, obviously Houston has the players. You have Altuve. You have Bregman. You have guys like that. It's not, you have Jordan. It's not a question of whether or not, the guys are, the talent is there. It's a question of whether or not they're just even like has the gas run out on the Astros? I don't know. I'm not willing to say that definitively, but when you're just not, they have, I mean, I'm looking at the list, I'm looking at the stats here. Like Jeremy Pena having a great year, Alex Bregman having a good year, Altuve having a great year again, Kyle Tucker, Jordan, all these guys, they're all contributing, but it's just not working. And it has been the pitching. They've struggled from the pitching side of it. They have just one guy who's pitched over 100 innings, and that's Ronel Blanco, who has been pretty good for them, no doubt about it. A sub-3 ERA and a sub-1 WHIP. Opponent average of 169. My gosh, that's unreal. That's not funny. And you got Hunter Brown, but Justin Verlander, where are you? Are you a real human being? Is Justin Verlander just a show? Does he actually do anything? JP France pitched one time. He's a position player? No. Who am I thinking? I'm thinking of JP Crawford. JP France is an actual pitcher, right? He's pitched 25 innings. I hope he's an actual pitcher. I mean, it'd be really bad if he had a position player pitching 25 and a third inning. That wouldn't be great. But yeah, I guess it's just been the pitching side for the Astros on that end. On the other end, a closer team to it is the Kansas City Royals. I do believe that the Kansas City Royals will end up making the playoffs, as much as I hate to say that because it's the Royals, and that would be yet another AL Central team that has made the playoffs before the Tigers, since the Tigers haven't made it since 2014. But they're just a good team, top to bottom. Well, they're inexperienced, but they're a good team. They have obviously Salvador Perez, who I don't know how he still is able to be such a consistent bat for them. I mean, just looking at, he's 34 years old and he's playing as if he's 24. It's like he's just always been good. And every year I'm like, this is going to be the year where Salvador Perez falls to the ground. This is going to be the year. And it never happens. At this point, I'm convinced he's going to be like 100 years old and he's going to be out there like batting like 260. And I'm going to be dead. I'm going to be, watching on from the afterlife as Salvador Perez still batting for the Royals and still destroying the Tigers. But obviously, Salvador Perez is sort of the second dish. I don't know if that's the right terminology. He's the side dish of the Bobby Witt Jr. show. Bobby Witt Jr., who is undoubtedly one of, if not the best shortstop in the American League, at least. He's been fantastic, batting .323 and .927 OPS, 16 home runs. He's got 22 stolen bags, too, which is absolutely crazy. 22 out of 31 attempts. Yeah, because it's 9 caught stealings. So 22 out of 31 times he's been successful. That's pretty good, right? That's pretty good. And you also still have contributions from Vinny Pasquantino, who has some pop, 731 OPS for him. Michael Massey, he's another one of these guys that gives you some solid at-bats, some solid power, 769 OPS for him. I guess the problem for them is they're not a particularly deep team. They don't have, the minor league depth to where if a guy goes down, they have more options. Not that I don't know that they're necessarily in danger of that, but it's just sort of, they're kind of an unknown. Like, are they able to get over this hump at this point? I think they are. This is the first year they've really shown some massive progress. Obviously, last year they were absolutely terrible, but this year they really turned it around. But you have other guys who are pitching very well. Seth Lugo having a great year. Cole Reagan's having a great year. Brady Singer having a great year. So you got your 1-2-3 punch in your pitching staff for the Royals. And I don't know. It's going well for them. So good for the Royals. And then moving on to the National League, I realize this is going to take a lot longer than I anticipated, but that's okay. It's a little bit of a breakdown. I'll probably be a little bit less detailed in the National League than I was in the American League. You got the Phillies, you got the Dodgers, you got the Brewers, you got the Braves, you got the Cardinals, and you got the Mets. I don't know how the Mets are in the playoffs. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what sort of sacrifice they had to make to Grimace, the McDonald's mascot, to get them to where they are, but apparently it's worked. And I don't condone sacrificing to Grimace, but I don't know. Maybe they found like some homeless guy or something, and they were just like, take him, and maybe he became Grimace. I don't really know how the Grimace lore works. If you're familiar, if you're from New York and you know how the Grimace lore works, let me know. I don't know. I don't know how a McDonald's mascot even got a show at a Mets game, but it's happening. So, as far as the Cardinals go, I'm gonna be honest. They feel, and maybe this is me not watching. They just seem like kind of like the Red Sox, where it's like, are you even a real team? Like, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, and then stuff. Like, I don't know who else is even on that team. And the fact that they're making the playoffs just goes to show how good of an organization that is, that they're just able to, maintain success at a relatively consistent rate. And then, I realize I'm going in the reverse order here. The Atlanta Braves, it's the Braves. They're one of the most well-run, probably one of the most well-run sports franchises, let alone baseball. You have so many guys on that team that are just absolute studs. You got your Ozunas, you got your Olsons, you got your Rileys. You even got, Kelnick, Darno, like Ozzy Albies, who, again, like you have a lot of guys, basically. The Braves is just, we got a lot of guys. That should be their phrase. That should be their rallying cries. The Braves, we got a lot of guys, and they do. They always do. They're the Braves. They're just always good. A team that feels a little weird to me. This is like the Mariners of the NL. Is the Milwaukee Brewers. Like, they're winning, right? Like they're in first in their division. They're in the playoffs, but I don't. Again, are you a real team? I don't know. I do not know. And then second in the leader, you have Los Angeles Dodgers. Do I even need to talk? Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts is out, but presumably he'll be back at some point. Honestly, just Ohtani and Freeman. That's the baseball team. That's it. That's all you need. That's your offense. You even got Teoscar Hernandez, who's Teoscar Hernandez. He's a solid player. And the Dodgers, I think right now they're a little rough with injuries, but if they can get healthy, if Glasnow can come back, and if Mookie Betts can come back, that to me is the World Series. And if it's not the World Series, I don't know what is at this point. Like, I guess the other option would be the Philadelphia Phillies, which is the bane of my existence for a multitude of reasons. Reason number one is that it's Philadelphia, and that place is a disgusting pool of psychotic people who need to be studied and locked in a lab for their own safety and for the safety of everybody else. We need to take the city of Philadelphia. We got to put a dome on it, like in the Simpsons movie. We got to do that with Philadelphia. We got to experiment. We got to figure out what the heck is going on. Anyways, the Phillies, the baseball team, though, again, it's similar to the Dodgers. Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, Alec Boehm, Trey Turner, Real Muto, and then on the pitching side, you got Wheeler, Nola, Ranger Suarez, Sanchez. Right now they feel like an unstoppable force. And I guess the other part of the bane of my existence is that their general manager is one Dave Dombrowski, former general manager of the Tigers. And I swear, if Dave Dombrowski, who has already won a World Series since leaving the Tigers, by the way, won it with the Red Sox, if he wins another, I don't know if I'll be able to sustain myself. I think I might just give up baseball at that point. Like, I don't. Why would I continue to go on watching this sport when I know that my team is just going to be embarrassed? I know, like, what will be even worse is if, like, Cody Clemens, who we traded to the Phillies for, like, I think that was in the Gregory Soto trade. Like, if Cody Clemens, like, becomes the postseason hero, then that would be even worse. Even the World Series MVP, Cody Clemens. I don't even know Cody Clemens even on the team right now? Cody Clemens. His stats. Oh, there he is. Cody Clemens. You know what? Respect. Cody Clemens. He's got a 777 OPS. Respect. He was awful with the Tigers, but you know what? He's managed to figure it out. He doesn't even have a position. His position is X. I've never seen that. Does he just play whatever? I'm Cody Clemens. Did you know I'm related to Roger Clemens? That's like the common every single broadcast, I swear. When Cody Clemens was playing for the Tigers, every single broadcast it felt like was like, did you know that Cody Clemens is Roger Clemens' son? Did you know that? Yeah, I know that. I figured it out. Thanks. But look, obviously at the halfway point, a lot of things can change. And I guess a couple of other notes on the NL side. The Diamondbacks and the Padres, and I guess technically the Pirates as well, they're all within 2 games of a wild card spot. Seth's Padres, which were in the wild card for a little bit there. They've fallen out. I just want one of our teams to make the playoffs because I want some fun, right? I want some fun baseball. I want to be able to do some postseason baseball reaction, but I can't do it. I can't do it because my organization, my team is, drinking glue, and Seth's organization is like lighting themselves on fire. Things are not, you know what? It's like what Kamala says. It's like what Vice President Kamala says.
Yeah, girl, I'm out here in these streets.
Girl, I'm out here in these streets. That's right, Kamala. We're out here in these streets with our baseball team. That will never not be funny to me. I'm sorry. If you don't think that drop is funny, I'm going to play it even harder. You know what?
Yeah, girl, I'm out here in these streets.
She really said that. She really said.
Yeah, girl, I'm out here in these streets.
Yeah, I bet you are, Kamala. But yeah, so as I was saying, you're at the halfway point. A lot of things can change. Teams can get hot. Trade deadline can change situations where, say a team like, I don't know, the Brewers, who I don't particularly have strong feelings for. Maybe they go out, they make a crazy trade deadline move, and they all of a sudden come alive. The Phillies could get even better. The Guardians could make moves. The Orioles, all these teams that are in the playoffs, or these teams that are fighting for playoff spots. Maybe the Astros go out and they're bold and they make a big trade. They sell, their top couple of prospects to go out and get an arm. I don't know. Teams get desperate. Obviously, at the trade deadline, I think almost especially in baseball, teams will get desperate and make rash moves like that. But that's what makes it so exciting. And at the halfway point, the entire standings could change by the time the season is over. The regular season, I mean. So take all this and all this analysis with a grain of salt. I mean, hey, I'm not always perfect, and I'm sure every people in the comment sections certainly are well aware of that. So, yeah. That was a lot of tabs that I had open. Pistons down by 6 against the Bulls in the Summer League, by the way. In case you were wondering. I know you were wondering. You were probably just dying to know how this happened. But I got a couple of Tiger things to talk about here. And this will probably be the next segment that we'll break down here. So the Tigers went and did it again. They gave me some hope, right? Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. I'm like Michael Corleone in The Godfather 3, which is not a real movie. It doesn't actually exist. It's not real. I'm quoting a fake. It's a deep fake. Anyway. So the Tigers, over the past couple of weeks, have become the hottest team in baseball. They've won 10 out of their last 14. They've won 3 series in a row, including a 4-game set against the Guardians and a 3-game set over this past weekend against the Dodgers. Game 2 of which I was at in a crazy 9th inning comeback where they were down 9-4, managed to come back and win the game 11-9. And then the next day, they're down 3-2 going into the 9th. They come back and walk that game off in crazy fashion. It's like they find their way to win. And look, I said this time last week when they were losing to the Guardians, a game that they almost won, by the way. They ended up losing that game just 8-9. They came back in that game, surprisingly. And I said at the time, maybe this is just sort of a mirage. We had our fun. It was enjoyable. We had a good weekend series against the Reds. We had our little fun. We barely beat the Guardians the day before. But we ended up winning that series. We ended up blowing the Guardians out that week, 10-1. Like, this offense is capable of doing that sort of thing. Now, granted, basically every offense is capable of doing that sort of thing in baseball. You play over 100 games. So eventually at one point, you're going to find a game where you're hitting the ball like you're using a tennis racket. But all of that is to say, there's something brewing, I would say, with this like weird like core of guys who this team just doesn't die, right? Like, and this is somewhat emblematic of, I wouldn't say exactly where they were at last year because they were worse off at this point last year, but this year it just feels like at every moment that you want them to just die, they just come crawling back. I don't know how to describe it because I really haven't seen this from this team in a very long time. Right now, in the standings, they are just 3 games under 500, 47-50. That's their best record at the All-Star break since, I want to say, 2016, where they were 1 game out of going to the playoffs. And right now, they're 12 games out of winning their division, so that's largely out of the question. But in the wild card, they're 7.5 games. Yeah, there's 7 games out of the wild card. Also not exactly super likely, but a little bit more likely. But I have a question, I guess, that I'm not sure about how comfortable I am feeling this way, but it seems like maybe there's something of like the machinations or not the machinations. That's not exactly the right word. Like, there's like this weird kind of core that is formed. And that is in Vierling, Perez, Green, and Keith. And now look, Riley Green's an all-star this year. He's had a fantastic year. He's easily the best player on the team. Matt Vierling, I kind of have always liked him. At least last year, I thought he was a fine player. He, seemed to be a pretty decent, above average bat. This year, it's like he is like the embodiment of the team in my mind, where it's like, he just does not die. Like, he does not, like, he refuses to just, like, bottom out. Now, is his average blowing you away? No. But it's also not, like, bottom of the league. It's still, like, I want to say it's a little above league average. He's batting 248. His OPS is 726. Not amazing, but it's also not terrible. The other thing is, he's got 12 home runs. He's second on the team. Again, not blowing you away with that, but it is what it is. And he plays a myriad of positions. He can play third base. He can play outfield. He can play first base, I'm pretty sure. Like, they're able to utilize him in a variety of ways. Now, is he, this electric foundational piece that you need to keep around? No, but he is providing help offensively and in some ways defensively. Like he fulfills a role, I guess is the point. And he fulfills it at an above average level. Now on Colt Keith is a guy who has absolutely turned it on to the point where he is now batting 253 with a 703 OPS. Now that OPS does not blow you away, but I mean, if you go back and like he had just that terrible start, he had a bad month of June as well. And I don't like to play the game of just get rid of the stats where they were bad and then look at how good his stats were. But the fact that his batting average is where it is now, and the fact that he has, he's now 1 home run away from double-digit home runs with 9 homers on the year and 37 ribbies, like he has started to show that he's about ready to kind of go off, if you will. And I would not be surprised if down this second stretch, Colt Keith, one of these months or one of these weeks, he's, AL player of the month or AL player of the week or one of these things where, he just comes out of nowhere and he hits like 3 bombs in a week or that's maybe not all that impressive. It's like 4 or 5 bombs in a week, right? Like it seems like every game he's hitting a home run or something like that, where he's just going crazy. And this is kind of what he did in the minor leagues. Like he would kind of take a little bit for him to get going, but then, you just every other day. It was like, oh, Colt Keith hit a home run. Colt Keith hit a triple. He hit a double. Colt Keith walk off, whatever. Like, he has started to show the signs of a foundational piece, in my opinion. And obviously, they believe he is a foundational piece. They extended him before the season even started. And look, I was fairly concerned about this. I was like, okay, is this really the right move? Is this what we want to see happen? And he has started to assuage the concerns I had about signing him before he even played. And then on the flip side, not exactly, you still have a guy like Wenzel Perez, who batting above league average, a 710 OPS, 260 average, not a lot of home runs, but he's a switch hitter. He can play the outfield. And he certainly exceeded expectations, I think, for a lot of people, where he's playing at an above, like he's playing as a reliable player. He's kind of like a more controllable and maybe a little bit less versatile, at least in terms of where you can play him in the field. He's like Matt Vierling, where it's like every time you want to think, oh, okay, he's just about to bottom out, he just doesn't. And I don't know how realistic that is. I don't know if he has any real future here, but it is what it is. And also, I should mention Justin Henry Malloy. He's hit 5 home runs in 33 games. You know, that's pretty good. His batting average is not all that great, but his OPS is 726. So you're like, okay, this is clearly a all or nothing kind of player, at least as of right now. We'll see if he can increase that average. I would like to see him be a more consistent hitter in general. But as it stands, J-Hen is still kind of developing. We'll see if maybe he can, as he gets more at-bats, you see a kind of Colt Keith-esque growth in Justin Henry Malloy. He was a guy that I remember when we traded for him. I want to say there was Braves fans who were like, "Oh man, he was one of our good prospects." That's a pretty decent trade for I was gonna say the Pistons, for the Tigers there. So far he's been kind of but he's shown some flashes, that's for sure. But I wanted to also take all this where we feel like we're almost over that hill, and then I want to talk about the Tigers draft. So the Tigers take Bryce Rayner, who is a shortstop out of high school, for the 11th pick, and their subsequent 2 picks after that on the first night of the draft, going into the second round, they take 2 high school pitchers. Now, far from me to say that taking high school players is a bad idea. I got no problem taking high school players. I got no problem taking players from any if they're high school, college, I don't care. It does not matter to me. If you believe they're the best player available, then you take the player. I don't care if it means we have to wait a little bit longer. If he's gonna be impactful, take the guy. That's why I didn't yell and scream about Max Clark, where it's like, yeah, I mean, like it'd be one thing if Max Clark was a college player and he comes up and he sucks, right? Like right now he's a high school bat, so he's got a lot of runway. But if he pans out, you could have a second Riley Green. You could have, a Bryce Harper. One of these like superstar guys that have been taken out of high school. And I wouldn't even want to hold back on whether or not I consider Riley Green a superstar. But maybe he is. Maybe people think he is. I don't know. Either way, what this does signal to me, though, one way or the other, is it's sort of this weird mixed message where, like, on the one hand, it's like, look at our young core. They're blossoming. We're spending on Colt Keith. We're kind of getting close to where we're almost above 500 again. Maybe we'll make a run for this wild card spot, or at least make things interesting for the summer. But then on the other end, it's like, we're still far away. We're going to draft a high schooler. We're going to let this play out, and we'll be competitive, 2-3 years from now. And that does give insight into what the GM is thinking one way or the other, because maybe he just believes that this guy is the best player. And I don't know. I'm going to be honest, like, people who are celebrating this or disparaging this, look, short of you being a real baseball mind, short of you being a real scout who's actually watched high school baseball, I'm going to be honest. I don't watch high school baseball. I don't watch minor league baseball, right? I don't know anything about this guy. And even if I did watch minor league baseball or high school baseball, that tells me nothing about how he's going to play when he's a Detroit Tiger. If he's a Detroit Tiger, right? Like, he might not make the team, right? Or we might trade him. I don't know. Like, so I guess my point here is that when you get mixed messages from a front office, I guess my default is to assume the more like if they thought they were going to be ultra competitive this year, which they are right now, they're the hottest team in baseball. But if they thought that they were going to be, quote unquote, the hottest team in baseball going into the All-Star break, they would have made more moves, right? And they wouldn't have probably drafted a high school player because they would have thought, well, we want a guy who can come up next year. And maybe by some miracle, this guy does. I don't think that's even really possible, but maybe by some miracle he does. And in this case, it sort of feels like how when they took Max Clark, where it's like, okay, all right, now I understand we're in this for the long haul, and that tells me come trade deadline, I don't know if Tarek Skubal is still going to be on the team. I don't know if Jack Flaherty is still going to be on the team, or Carson Kelly, or Jason Foley, or Mark Canner, or Gio Rochelle, any of these guys who you could see be on the move. And the reasoning for that is because, well, they're telling you, right? They're telling you, okay, we're taking another high school guy. He's not going to be up for, another 2-3 years at the least. So right now we're in the asset collection. We're seeing what we have, and what they see probably is, Riley Green is a stud, Torkelson. Tarek Skubal is a stud, and Colt Keith could be a stud in the making. So it's hard for me to get like, oh, are we a wild card team? Are we going to make the wild? Are we going to make a run for the play? It's hard for me to get into that mindset when it's like they're taking another shortstop that's a high schooler. And that, again, this is not me saying that this player is going to suck. I have no idea if this player is going to suck or be good. I hope he's, Derek Jeter. I hope he's, the best shortstop ever. The point is, what this tells me as far as the state of the team goes, or at least as far as what Scott Harris and Greenberg think, is this team is not yet ready to compete, and that's probably true. So expect some selling at the deadline. And that might be hard to hear, but I think it's the truth. I think that Scott Harris has not really lied in so much as he hasn't said one thing and done another. But either way, if he's right, then maybe we're competitive over the next late 2020s, right? Like we're a perennial World Series contender. We're like, trying to think of a comparable team. We're like the Astros, right? Where they just kept drafting all these guys, they kept picking up all these guys, making these moves, and they all sort of came up around the same time. Maybe not all at the same time, but around the same period, to the point where, you have Correa coming up, I think you have Altuve was probably the first one who came up, and then you have your Correas, you have your Bregmans, and then you bring in the Verlanders of the world, and all of a sudden, look out, here come the Houston Astros. Maybe that's the thought. Or like the Chicago Cubs, in the 2010s, with Schwarber and Javi Baez, and all those guys, right? I don't know. I guess, and I hate to be in that position. I like to at least try to offer the people something in terms of some, like, you can look at this and maybe this is going to be successful, or like provide some example. But to me, it's like, I just don't. I got nothing in terms of, like, right now, as fun as it is and as enjoyable as maybe it has been the past couple of games, couple of series here. I think realistically, probably gonna fall on its face, and even if it doesn't, I think it might be, reality might set in, And we're going to see guys like Flaherty, potentially guys like Skubal, depending on the offer, on the move come July 30th. It sucks, but if you trade those guys and you pick up a haul and all of a sudden, into next year and the year after that, you've got just the top three. You got like a top three, like maybe even the number one. Like you look like the Baltimore Orioles in a couple of years. Man, all I'm saying is, if you believe in the guy, if you believe in Harris, and I have no reason to say that he's, a complete failure. I bet a lot of question marks, but things could turn around quickly. I mean, you see it a lot in sports. So it all depends on whether or not you got the right guy in charge. And we won't know until we know. So, yeah. So during that segment, Ron Holland actually had like a pretty cool dunk, I will say. The Pistons are still losing, 61-54. But I don't know. Just thought I mentioned that. And since I mentioned that, let's get into some NBA stuff before we wrap up the show. There's also another thing I want to talk about briefly here. So I guess I'll just briefly talk about these summer league games and just sort of my general feelings about them and how reliable they are. So this game's not over, so we're not going to talk about it because I won't have a complete real discussion point. But Pistons played a couple of summer league games. Ron Holland in his debut shot 5 for 15. That's 33% from the field. He had 15 points, though. A couple of blocks, a steal, a couple of assists, 7 rebounds. 83% from the free throw line. Pretty good. 5 for 6. 0 for 2 from 3. Yeah, I mean, like, again, like this game, I don't know. He's made some highlight plays. I don't know what it actually looks like on a stat sheet. Hopefully, he's been shooting better. Basically, my whole thing is like, look, we know, or at least the thing that we went into with Ron Holland is that, well, he's not the best shooter right now. So he needs to develop that shot. He needs to get better from that. So from my perspective, what I want to see is him shoot the ball effectively, right? Like that's all I want. If I can see him do that, and I know right now it's summer league, so they're doing it against, G League guys that probably won't make the team. I understand that. It is what it is. And I'm not gonna any of these stats, I'll forget about them by the time the season begins. Especially if X or Y player is playing good or bad. I'll forget about any performance they might have had in the summer league. But in my opinion, I wouldn't say it was a bad debut by any means. You scored 15 points in your debut on 24 minutes. I'll take that. That sounds good. That's pretty good production. But would like to see a little bit more effective shooting there. Now, I want to talk about. Now, I'm not. What you might be thinking is I'm going to talk about Denise Jenkins. No, I'm not talking about Dennis or Denise Jenkins. I'm not doing it. All right. Every year, some random nobody who has absolutely, and maybe this will come back to bite me, but has absolutely no future as an NBA player, is not an NBA talent. They'll just go off in summer league, and everybody's like, they're the steal of the draft. And then they just go into the NBA, and people forget about them. Like, I don't know Denise Jenkins from a hole in the wall. What I do know is that it's summer league, and any reaction outside of, that's pretty cool to see. Like, these are basically not basically, they are exhibition games. I mean, we're talking like crowds of maybe 100 total people. Maybe. Like, non-fans for the most. Like, people who are just in Vegas, and they're like, hey, why don't we go catch a summer league game? Hey, I kind of like basketball. That could be fun. Tickets are, I don't know. I don't know how expensive tickets are. I can't imagine they're any more than like $30 a person. No way. If they are charging you like $100 a person to go to a summer league game, then I'm you better sue the NBA. Just find Adam Silver and just throw the book at him. That would be ridiculous. But I'm not gonna talk about Denise Jenkins. I will, however, talk about Bobby Klintman, who spells his name Bobi. Nothing against that personally. I just think it's kind of weird. But past couple of games, at least those first 2 summer league games, he has kind of been like good, like better than I expected. So Bobby Klintman, by the way, he's the guy who we traded for in the second round from Minnesota. So he's a guy who presumably we had our eye on and enough to make a move to go get him. In game 1, he shot 50% from the field. He shot 42% from 3, 3 for 7 from 3, 5 for 10 from the field. Had 13 total points though, so he wasn't a lot of points, but effective percentage. Taking good shots and making them. In game 2, he had 18 points. Again, shot 50% from 3, 4 for 8, 53% from the field. So effective shooting. Points wise, obviously it's not, he's not dropping 30 bombs, but in 31 minutes played, he gets 18 points. He's a rebound away from a double-double. I'm just saying, I'm not Bobby Klintman. Maybe he's a total mirage. Maybe he's not all that good, but decent production from a guy you get in the second round. And that's all I can ask for. Because, hey, you could have taken Bronny. And the other day, he had 2 more points than me. Remember when the Lakers fans, and I don't know if many people remember this, but Lakers fans, when I made fun of their organization for being unserious and stupid for hiring JJ Redick. So you guys still think you're a serious organization? That you really care about winning? When you drafted Bronny James in the second round? I don't care. Like, here's what people, it's a second round pick. They're probably gonna suck anyway. You picked someone who will certainly suck, right? Someone who had no evidence of not sucking. At least if you would have taken, hell, if you could have taken, somebody who might be a G League player, right? Like, or might be a decent NBA player, but is probably just an everyday G League player, right? Some depth piece. Bronny James might not be a G League player, right? Like, this guy might not be a professional basketball player. He might not have even been a college basketball player. And, like, it amazes me whenever and this is basically, at this point, everybody is just making the obvious observation that Bronny James is just bad. Like, there's no getting around it. He is not a good basketball player. At least not at this level. Obviously, he'd probably destroy me, but, hey, I'm 5'7" and he's 6'1", right? Like, that's just math. That's just science, okay? But either way, right? Like, the fact that he was drafted, he should not have been drafted. That organization, man, God bless the Lakers fans, because they're going to need it. It's okay. Yeah, great. Anyway, I just wanted to, kind of sound off on that. And in NBA offseason news, wasn't a whole lot, but Jalen Brunson gets an extension with the Knicks, $157 million, takes a pay cut. He was eligible for $269 million, took the pay cut to stay in New York. Look, everything I hear about Jalen Brunson, every time I watch Jalen Brunson, he's becoming one of my favorite players that's not on the Pistons. He's an electric player. He's a guy you want to root for. He bet on himself and went to the Knicks, and he has been an absolute superstar. He's the face of their franchise. He embodies the Knicks to me, like this kind of tough, gritty, blue collar attitude team. Like, he embodies that, and I'm so glad to see that he's sticking around with the pay cut. Like, you really don't see that very often anymore in sports, and this is not an NBA thing necessarily. And I don't even fault players for not taking pay cuts. I totally understand. Why would you want to take less money? If it was me, I'd take the most money. But like in this particular case, it's like, this is a guy, he could have taken that big that big paycheck, and people would have not been mad at him. People would have loved it. They would have said, "This is our guy. He's the man. We love him. Jalen Brunson's the dude." But he wants to win for the city, and I think if anybody were to win with the Knicks, and the Knicks have not won in a very long time, I would really hope it would be Jalen Brunson with that crowd, with that group. Like they deserve it. It's a good story. I really like it. So shout out to Jalen Brunson. Great move for the Knicks to keep him around and to keep him around at a cheaper price. So finally. So this broke today. NFL rumors: Brandon Ayuk requests a trade from the wide receiver from the 49ers as he seeks a new contract. So this has been basically an offseason story since the offseason, basically. Like, and it didn't really reach any sort of meaningful point until today, where the news comes out that Brandon Ayuk requests a trade. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is not because I don't necessarily, talk about this sort of thing. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever. The requested a trade, big whoop. Like, but in this case, this is a big whoop in so much as obviously Brandon Ayuk, 49ers in the NFC. And look, I think the Lions, they are a team that is primed to go to the Super Bowl next year, which is crazy to say, but it is. It's just reality. And I will take any chance and any opportunity to see a fellow NFC Super Bowl contender like the 49ers get worse. If they lose Brandon Ayuk, they will factually be worse. It's not that they will be bad. It's not that they will not still be a competitor for the Super Bowl. The fact will be, though, they will lose their best wide receiver, not named Deebo Samuel, who is honestly more of a utility running back, trick play, wide out. Like, Deebo Samuel does a little bit of everything for them. Brandon Ayuk is their best true receiver. Like, just totally a receiver. And look, I kind of was joking a little bit with Seth. I was like, "Oh, you are Brandon Ayuk. You are a Detroit Lion. Make the call." I'm not saying you got to do anything. Would he fit in? I don't know. I'm not saying you have to do this. If they don't call, no, I don't care. That's fine. We're good. We have a lot of weapons in this offense. We don't necessarily need to add Ayuk. However, it would be intriguing, right? It would be very intriguing because I guess my fear is another team in the NFC goes after him. Maybe the Packers. They try to put together a package. Maybe even in the AFC. Maybe the Chiefs. I mean, because right now the Chiefs, they just won a Super Bowl. They just beat Brandon Ayuk. And they're looking for wide receiver help because they don't know if Rashee Rice, I don't know what his situation is, how long he is going to be suspended, if at all, or any of that. Like, maybe they make the call. I don't know. You even have Philly, which already has, Super Bowl aspirations, and they probably want to make a splash. I don't know why. For some reason, Brandon Ayuk kind of feels like it would make sense in Philly. I don't know. Now, ultimately, the reality is, and this might be just kind of me being boring, but reality is often much less interesting than any fantasy we could imagine for ourselves, at least in the sports world. He's probably just going to end up going back. Like, he's probably, this is, a little bit of a negotiating ploy. Like, I want out. I don't want to be here. Trade me. San Francisco apparently has expressed no interest in trading him, so they're not taking calls. So if you call them and like, "Hey, Brandon Ayuk," and they're like, "Oh yeah, let me go get him for you," and then you just hear, "Hello, San Fran, hello." Yeah, basically that's what you hear. You just hear dial tone because they're probably not going to end up moving him. He's probably going to end up signing or getting tagged or whatever. Like, I would be shocked, okay? I'd be shocked if he is on another team. However, if he's going to be on another team, I'd like it I wouldn't mind it if the Lions made that call. I wouldn't mind it. I'm not saying they got to make the call. I do think J-Mo will have a breakout year similar to the kind of year that Brandon Ayuk just had this past year. And obviously, St. Brown is one of, if not the best wide receiver in football right now, outside of maybe your Justin Jeffersons of the world. You know, the point is, like, it's Brandon Ayuk, right? He's still a stud. And if you add him to your offense, assuming he's going to be a grinder, assuming he's going to buy into the culture and be that guy, I don't see why you wouldn't, like, you're telling me you'd rather, and this is no disrespect, you're telling me you'd rather have Khalif Raymond in there other than instead of Brandon Ayuk? I like Khalif Raymond. I think he's been a great player for us. But look, like, as far as depth goes, if you could have a starting wide receiver room of St. Brown, Ayuk, J-Mo, and then Khalif coming in and backup and in those trick play roles and returning kicks and all that, like, I'm not saying you got to do it, but it would be intriguing. It would be intriguing if they did. If rumors came out that the Lions inquired about it. There's already been rumors that the Patriots inquired about him, which makes a lot of sense because they're in need of a star receiver for their rookie quarterback, Drake May. Right? Isn't that who they drafted? I don't even remember. It was... why am I blanking? Hold on. Drake May was drafted by the Patriots, right? Am I losing my mind? Drake May. Yes. Okay. Okay. I had a moment there where I don't know why. The Patriots quarterback just completely left my brain. And maybe that's just because Tom Brady was there for so long and then it was Mac Jones and things. But look, all I'm saying is Brandon Ayuk is available, or at least he wants to be available. I don't think he actually will be. Put a little bit of pressure on San Fran. One way or the other, even if it means that they have to give in to his demands and put up a bunch of money that they don't want to do, that's fine, right? Like, I mean, they keep him. That's not, you don't feel great about that. But on the other hand, it's like, well, they just did something they don't feel comfortable to do because you put the pressure on them, right? It's the same. It's the reason why when we signed Jared Goff and when we signed St. Brown, it's like the rest of the teams in the league are like, oh, man, they got ahead of us, and now we got to pay our guy more than their guy. And that's where a shrewd GM, where it's the moves that you don't really see. It's that kind of stuff. That's where, you can really get ahead of other teams. So, yeah. Brandon Ayuk, I doubt he'll move, but wouldn't mind if the Lions made that call. But with that, that's gonna be that is gonna be the end of the show. Sorry, I forgot how to speak English. That's gonna be the end of the show. We hit everything. See, every time I think it's Slow News Week, it still ends up being an hour show. So, shout out to me for talking and rambling like a madman. I don't know. But if you enjoyed, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button. Spread the show. Leave a comment. Talk about anything we talked about today. Want to talk baseball? Talk baseball. Let's do it. I love it. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We'll be back again next week for the week before the trade deadline. And then, oh man, that July 30th show is either going to be a yelling match between me and I don't know, maybe Seth. Hopefully Seth will be back on that show because I'm sure he would love to see my reaction if the Tigers don't do anything or if they do something stupid. But either way, next couple of weeks, it's going to be kind of weird because we're sort of we're close to football season, which is actually kind of weird because once you get into August, technically football season starts. I mean, that first preseason game, I believe, is August the 1st. The Hall of Fame game, I want to say, is August the 1st. And it's going to be the worst football you'll ever see, but I'm going to watch. Because I got nothing but I'm desperate right now for football. I'm desperate. I'll tell you, I've said this before, the NFL, they know how to get you. Because football starts, let's say August, right? Let's just be generous and say August. And it goes all the way into February. By the time you hit February, you're footballed out. You're like, oh my, no more football. I can't do it. Oh my gosh, this has been too much football. And then the offseason starts and you're like, oh, I'm sort of still into it or whatever. And maybe it's like a little bit of a jolt back into it. And then, the draft happens and you're like, oh, here we go. And then it just stops. And it's just quiet for like, let's see, from the middle-ish of April all the way to August. So you got May, June, July. So you got about 3.5 months of just nothing football. And that is just what, like, it all of a sudden, especially if you have a bad baseball team or a bad hockey team or a bad basketball team, which we do, you suddenly start to crave that football again. So, look, I'm looking forward to it, especially, maybe we'll have 2 good football teams this year, he said, with no confidence in Michigan State. Anyways, with that, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed. Leave a comment. We'll have a conversation. Yeah, I got nothing else to say. I'll see you all next week to break it all down. Whatever happens, hopefully we have bigger news. Hopefully crazy things happen. But either way, have a good night, everybody, and I'll see you guys next week. See ya.